You are listening to and streaming a More Perfect Union on KBLA Talk 1580. I'm Dr. Nii-Quartelai and really delighted to be beaming in live from the White House. Look, there are moments in journalism when stories find you, when something happens that's so big and so devastating and so deeply human that you know it must be documented, you know it's got to be witnessed, you know it's got to be preserved. This is what happened when the Eaton Fire swept through Altadena, California on January 7th, 2025. But what the national media didn't tell you, what most people still don't fully understand is what Altadena was before the fire, what it meant, what it represented for Black California. And so my next guest knows that and more. He lived it. He's a fourth generation resident of Altadena. He is the president of the NAACP Pasadena branch, and he has poured that love, he's poured that history and that grief into a documentary film that premieres this Saturday, June 27th, at the TCL Chinese Theatre in Hollywood. Beneath the Ashes, the Past Reimagined. Brandon Lamar, welcome to A More Perfect Union, my brother.
Man, I'm glad to be here. I am so glad to be here with you, bro.
Well, so glad to have you here. Brandon, I want to start with something personal. As I mentioned in your intro, you are fourth generation from Altadena. And for our leaders, learners, and listeners across the country who may not know Altadena like you know Altadena and like I have had a chance to get to know Altadena, but tell them what Altadena was. What did it represent for Black families in California, particularly in an era when Pasadena and so many neighboring cities had redlining policies that literally locked Black people out of home ownership?
Yeah, so in is very particular because Altina was actually one of the highest concentration of Black homeowners in the entire country. And that for one of the reasons being, as you already alluded to, in the 1950s, 1960s, um, Pasadena was really, and also some other areas around Pasadena was really big on redlining, but not only redlining, but they had properties that had racial covenants on those properties, which means that that family could not sell that home to an African American family or a person of color. So when that happened, people started moving to Altoona, the 710 stub in Pasadena, where Pasadena was going to connect to Long Beach. That freeway displaced 4,000 families. And then come 50 years later or 70 years later, the freeway was never built, but that now that land has been turned over to the city. But you also see a lot of those families in the 1950s and 1960s who have moved to Altoona. So Altoona was a place where African Americans, Black families were able to find safety, was able to create generational wealth, was able to buy homes, and create that safety net for their families so that they can actually pass down something to the next generation. And that's what we're fighting to continue to have within our community right now.
And so give us a sense of, what's the state of play in the community as of today. I'm sitting here at the White House, and we know that it wasn't long ago that we saw LA Mayor Karen Bass and LA County Supervisor, uh, uh, the LA County Supervisor representing the area here at the White House, sort of trying to generate some additional support from the Trump administration uh, to deliver on some promises to folks who were impacted not just by the fire in the Palisades, but also in Altadena. Any updates on that?
Yeah, I mean, we're finding that in order to recover from this fire, there's going to take about 20 billion to 30 billion dollars in order to recover in totality from this fire. But what we're also seeing is that talking about generational wealth and our grandmothers and great grandmothers who bought these properties, the issue that we're seeing now is that for those who did have insurance, they never transferred or they never updated their insurance. So grandma bought the house for $40,000, $70,000, but now the house is worth $1.1 million. But the insurance company is still trying to give you that $70,000 because you never updated it, right? Or you have issues where families never transferred over the deeds from the passing family member to the living family member. And so when the fire happened, there was a lot of resources that families could not get because, in particularly the Black families, because they didn't transfer over the deeds. The problem that we're seeing now within our community, especially for those who did have insurance, is that for a lot of those, their insurance is playing games with them at this point, right? They paid their premium, but the payouts are not coming fast enough. For those families who did not have enough insurance, there's gaps that families are playing. We're seeing right now that the minimum gap that people are having right now is between the $250,000 and $350,000 gap for them to have their families or for them to have their homes rebuilt. Also within insurance policies is what we're seeing, that some insurance are paying for people rentals as they're rebuilt, but now that is actually coming into play where that money is starting to be obsolete. So they have spent down that money. So there's a real situation in our community where families are literally paying rent and mortgage at the same time out of their budget, while also trying to play the fact of rebuilding their homes. And so we haven't seen a lot from the federal government when it comes to support in rebuilding or even support in finances. We've been fighting FEMA ever since day one. FEMA was supposed to be giving our families $46,000 two times, and majority of our families only received about 700 of those dollars. Some have continued to be denied from FEMA. So there's a real crisis that we are seeing, but we've seen this across the board. Every single disaster that have struck in our communities, we have seen that it has struck and hit harder in the Black community than any other community.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. And I just want to give you a chance to double click on those numbers because I don't think folks across the country really understand the delta in terms of the need that people still have, the unfulfilled need, and what little bit of assistance they have received.
Yeah, I mean, there's been very little assistance. When you talk about insurance versus no insurance or insurance versus little insurance, families are really at the brink of breaking, right? And some people are selling their properties because they have no other choice but to sell, right? And I know everybody's talking about this lawsuit with Edison, but the truth of the matter is everybody cannot wait to figure out what the lawsuit is going to bring, right? All of our families cannot wait to see what that lawsuit is going to bring. And so it is important that we advocate for resources. The truth of the matter is, within these numbers, the one thing that we've been pushing for our county is to actually collect data to see the racial data of who's building, who's pulling permits, who has started construction. As of today, we don't know how many Black families have actually pulled permits. We don't know how many Black families have actually started construction. I know the people from my church who have started construction, or people in my network who have, but the total number, we don't know. And I think if we're going to actually fight for equitable recovery, we have to see those things. The other part that we're seeing in our community right now is developers coming into our community, buying up land. 49% of the properties that have been sold so far in Altadena have either been to corporate buyers or to international buyers. Right now,
and Brandon, I just want to pause right there because this is a very important tie-in to the very piece of legislation that the president has refused to sign. I am here live in real time on the White House lawn, and right behind me, I think right now in the Rose Garden, the president is at an event. He's at an event, celebration in the Rose Garden, but still has not signed this bipartisan housing bill that Democrats and Republicans have come together to produce. And part of what it would do, there are a number of things it would do, but it would limit private equity's ability to buy up all the single family homes, right? I mean, this is part of what is driving up the cost of housing across the country. This is part of what is going to make rebuilding in Altadena more challenging than it needs to be. And so I just want to connect the dots between the piece of legislation that was passed that has yet to be signed and what you are experiencing and what the people of Altadena are experiencing right now on the ground.
Absolutely, man. I said it earlier this morning, is that we don't even know how rich our land is here. You had a 900 square foot house that sat on a quarter of acre of land. You had a 1,000 square foot house that sat on a quarter acre of land here. And we are literally seeing developments coming into our communities where people have bought that land, and now they have 6 units going up right now on one of those quarter acre or half acre of lands, right? You have properties that was for 1.1 or worth $1.1 million, or developers who bought the land for $600,000 or $500,000, but now they have rebuilt that property, and now the home is worth, or they're selling the home for $1.9 million. This is messing up the diversity within our community. It's messing up the longevity of Black families being within our community as well. But it is also bringing greed into our community. And that is something that we're fighting every single day to stop. And like you said, man, all it takes is the signature of one pen, from one pen to make it happen, so that we can make sure that families are able to stay within their community and stop the corporate greed.
And I also just want to double click on something that I want to give you a chance to double click on something that I heard, that Altadena's Black population, which was already declining, is it true it's now projected to fall below 5% after the fire?
Yeah, that's the projection. Before the fire, we were at 16%. 15 years
Whoa.
ago, we was about 28%. And now after the fire, when it comes to the rebuild, it is projected that it will be below 5%.
I mean, I just want to give all of our leaders, learners, and listeners an opportunity to absorb that. It almost took the breath out of me. I'm sure there are a number of people that are tapped in that may feel the same way. This film, it really shares the voices of homeowners who've lost everything, renters that are searching for stability, business owners that are rebuilding from scratch, and community leaders like yourself that have been fighting on the front lines to preserve what took generations to create. What was the most unexpected story that you encountered in making this film? And anything surprise you?
To be honest, man, nothing surprised me, truthfully. But the reason why we created this is because I wanted it to be shown that it's not a matter of if a next disaster is going to happen. It's when the next disaster is going to happen. And how do we prepare communities of color across the nation to actually prepare to be prepared when disaster strikes, right? Whether it be a flood, whether it be a tornado, whether it be an earthquake, which we just saw Venezuela had one yesterday, whether it be a fire like ours or a windstorm, whatever the case may be. We want to make sure that we collect these stories so that our communities are prepared. Not only that our communities are prepared, but our communities know how to advocate with government entities to prepare our communities for disasters, right? At the end of the day, there should not have been not one family in our community who did not have an updated deed. The assessor's office should be literally communicating with all single family homes or all landowners in our community that, hey, you need to update your deed. You need to increase your insurance. Like, these things should be coming from our systems, but it's not. And so this film is to help educate our community, and particularly the Black community, on what we need to do and how we can recover. And at the end of the day, it also speaks to, I call them the community first responders. Before the fire department, before the sheriff's department, before water and power showed up, It was our community that was knocking on each other's doors, telling them to evacuate. It was our community that was going into homes, picking up elderly people and walking them to safety. And so we see the response from community, and that's the thing that we want to highlight here. But we also want to highlight the truth. You'll see a family, her name is Dawn. She's literally in the middle of rebuilding her home right now. She's literally almost done. She can move in next month. That's
Wow.
how quick it has happened for her. But you also see families in there that are prominent people within our community who just didn't have enough, that they're helping their daughter rebuild before they rebuild because they didn't have enough money or enough insurance to be able to do so. And so these are real situations that is happening in our community. And the thing that we are highlighting, that it can also happen to you too.
When we come forward, more with Brandon Lamar, the producer of an extraordinary documentary that folks will have a chance to see in Hollywood starting this Saturday. It's called Beneath the Ashes. And Brandon knows quite a bit about that, and not just as a frontline leader and a frontline leader with the Pasadena branch of the NAACP. In fact, he's the president of the Pasadena branch of NAACP, but he knows that as a fourth generation resident of Altadena. When we come forward, Brandon, I want to talk about disaster resilience politics. And I also want to get our call to action from you because there's an election that's happening in California. And I want to make sure that our leaders, learners, and listeners aren't just grabbing photos with their candidate of choice, but they're asking critical questions and making wise decisions on who will represent them moving forward. You are listening to and streaming A More Perfect Union live from the White House. More when we come forward. You are listening to and streaming A More Perfect Union on KBLA Talk 1580. I'm Dr. Nii-Quartelai, and I always enjoy being in conversation with this incredible leader, Brandon Lamar. He's also the producer of Beneath the Ashes. Beneath the Ashes. It is Beneath the Ashes, the Past Reimagined. It's premiering Saturday, June 27th at the TCL Chinese Theatre in Hollywood. If you're wondering, what is that cricket sound? Well, it's because we are outside on the White House grounds where we're broadcasting live today. What I love so much about what we're able to do here at KBLA Talk 1580 is connect the dots between what's happening here at the White House over my shoulder and what's happening in your house and what's happening in our community. And that's also what this documentary is doing. It's connecting the dots and actually doing it quite well. Brandon, before the break, you were saying a number of things, but one thing I just want to lift up a little bit. We're heading into the final stretch of this election year after Labor Day. And I know there are a lot of candidates for office that are out there, many of which we've spoken to here on KBLA. And, there are lots of folks that want to get their selfie with their candidate of choice or candidate of interest. And there's nothing wrong with that. I ain't going to put no salt in anybody's game getting the picture with one of your favorite electeds or favorite candidates. But it sounds to me that particularly for the folks who are running for positions like county assessor, for folks who are running for positions like California insurance commissioner, for people who are running for mayor, among other offices, it seems to me that based upon the experience that survivors of the Eaton Fire and, for that matter, the Palisades Fire, it seems to me that there's a little to-do list that is emerging in your notebook. What's your message to folks out there engaging the people who say, I want to represent you in these offices that hold critical authorities, hold critical microphones and power when it comes to making a material difference in the rebuild effort of folks in Altadena?
Yeah, the first thing that I'll say is this: representation without a footprint means nothing. A lot of people say they represent communities that they never walked in, they never show up to, that they never engage with. And so in this election cycle, what we've been really pushing is for candidates to get to know the communities that they say they want to represent. For us, the two biggest elections right now in our community is, of course, the governor's race, but also the insurance commissioner's race. And we're very big on that because of the fires and what it is doing. And also, when you have premiums, like I said before, that families have been paying for years and still haven't seen a payout from their insurance company, right? Rob Bonta did an investigation and he put State Farm on blast, and they had an investigation. Now State Farm owes money, but State Farm ain't the only one, right? There's so many other ones who have taken advantage of people in the midst of their tragedy, in the midst of their trauma. And so what we've been saying, especially in the community where Altadena, who had a voter turnout rate of 80%, let's say that again, this Black community, this community who was diverse, this community that was majority Black, had a voter turnout rate of 80%. That didn't come from me. That came from the Secretary of State herself. This is why it is important that we see representation within our community. For me, I'm not voting for nobody that don't have a footprint in our community. I'm not voting for anybody who did not come and say, how you doing? How can we help? I'm not voting for anybody who has not stood up against these insurance companies beforehand, right? You can be insurance commissioner that you're running for it. Of course, you're not in the office yet, but you have a voice right now that holds weight. And this is what we're asking people to do as of right now. Evaluate who wants to represent us at the end of the day. At the end of the day, everybody got their issues, they got their struggles. And for me, I don't put my faith in no man and in no position. But at the end of the day, we really want people in these seats who are going to advocate for what I call the least of these. People who are so busy working that they can't advocate for themselves. People who are so busy taking care of their lives that they can't advocate for themselves. These are who we need in these seats at this time.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And I just want to remind folks, because I said it before, I'll say it again. There's a delegation of folks led by LA Mayor Karen Bass and also by the LA County Supervisor Catherine Barger. They were here at the White House advocating for people in the county who have been impacted by the wildfires, folks in LA City who've been impacted. And so don't believe the mis and disinformation out there, because I think I saw some stuff on social media that suggested that, somehow these elected officials were just in the Oval Office, just, palling it up with President Trump, when in fact, they were really trying to urge him to put some pressure on the insurance companies to deliver and put some pressure on the federal government to deliver critical reimbursements to the city and county so that people can be made whole and the rebuilding process can accelerate.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I commend Mayor Karen Bass and Supervisor Barger for meeting with the president. We don't have to see eye to eye, and we ain't got to go to lunch, and we ain't got to pat each other's back on how we advocate for our communities. But at the same time, I think both of them understand that we cannot have a rebuild without the federal government supporting and helping us. California has the fourth largest economy in the world. That is great, but we also have our own issues, and we need the federal government as well to support within our communities. And so I commend them for doing what most would not do to really support our community and advocate within our community, especially against a force that seems to be against our local bodies.
Brandon, speaking of the federal government, I had a chance to watch much of your film today, and I watched much of it actually right here at the White House, by the way. And one of the questions that still looms for me is around disaster resilience, right? it is something that we all better get real familiar with, because in this era of climate change today, it is, an earthquake in Venezuela, and there's an earthquake even in Northern California. It may be a wildfire, maybe a hurricane, but in this era of climate change, no community is safe. What is it that you really want our communities to know? What is it that you really want Black and brown people to know uh, about the cause of disaster resilience as they walk away holding so much more from this film?
Yeah, so a couple of things that we want people to know, and these are practical things, right? I want to give you practical things to hold on to. Number one, you should know all of your neighbors. You should know who they are, whether you like them, you dislike them. You should know who they are, and you should have their contact information. At the end of the day, I said it before, the people who respond to disasters first is always community, and typically it's your neighbors. And so you want to get to know those people. The second thing is, you look, at the end of the day, when a disaster strikes, your cell phone is not going to work. We can tell you a lot of people left their cell phones behind in the middle of this fires. And so have a sense of like an earthquake kit or a flood kit that you can actually grab, that has your documentations with you, that has a copy of your ID, whether it's even a scanned copy of your ID. Have those things accessible for you. Also, for organizations in the community, my thing is, you should be getting to know foundations and community foundations that's within your area right now. Don't wait until a disaster strikes for you to be prepared. Also, especially Black communities of color, Black or communities of color, we need to start preparing our own communities, making sure that we are saying every single day, hey, have you updated your insurance? Have you transferred over the deed? Do you have an evacuation plan? Do you have savings with money that you can get to, right? And these are the things that we didn't know we needed until the disaster hit. The tragedy within our community is that when it was time for families in Altadenan to actually evacuate, they couldn't evacuate to Pasadena or Arcadia or Monrovia. They had to go way out to Fontana, Palmdale, because everybody from the Palisades and Malibu was in Pasadena, right? And so it is, for us, we are looking at those tangible things on how do we prepare our communities, right? And as you're rebuilding, we're asking people to look at rebuilding options that make your home more resistant to fire. There's no home that is actually fireproof, but your home can be more resistant to fire or more resistant to floods, right? And those are the things that we're educating our community about right now in this time, right? It'll be something crazy, that even though we went through a fire, we're also an earthquake state. And we've been telling people, hey, while you are rebuilding right now, you should also be thinking about an earthquake. We ain't had a bad one in a long time here, but you should be prepared if one was to strike. And as of right now, we're not prepared. And so those are the things that we're continuing to remind our communities about during this time.
In our remaining minutes, Brandon, I want to quickly talk to you about the documentary as activism. I'm a big fan of documentary filmmaking. In fact, I have a few projects in development right now. But I want to ask you why you believe this storytelling form is so powerful. I mean, you could have just, organized. You could have just filed a policy brief. You decided to make a film. Why a documentary? Why did this story need to be seen and not read?
The truth of the matter is, I decided this way because if we're going to keep our history alive, we have to be the one to tell it. Right now in the city of Pasadena, we, as I mentioned before, we have the 710 stub back, and our city got that back from Caltrans about 2.5 years ago. And this was an area in the 1950s, 1960s that was heavy Black. And now that we have the land back, our city is trying to figure out, what are we going to do with this land? Well, now we're telling our city, hey, you need to make sure that this land goes back to descendants that were displaced from this from this property. But you also have white counterparts who are literally in our city council meetings saying, why do we even know Black people ever lived here in the first place? How do we even know that they resided in these spaces that you say that they were once here? These are the things that we're fighting on with a local level. So the reason why we documented it in this way is because we never want nobody to come and say, well, how do you know Black people lived in Altadena? How do you know Black people were the highest concentration in Altadena in the United States, right? And this is the best way for us to not only document it, but educate not only our local communities, but once again, educate nationally. At the end of the day, a disaster can strike where I am right now, or a disaster can strike where you are right now in Washington, D.C. And we want to make sure, in particularly, our Black communities are safe, protected, and covered when that does happen. And that's why this documentary is so important.
Well, Brandon Lamar, let me just say you are the embodiment of what it means to be not just a community servant, but a servant leader and a storyteller at the same time. Beneath the Ashes, the Past Reimagined. It premieres this Saturday, June 27th at 11:30 a.m. at the TCL Chinese Theatre in Hollywood. Tickets and information are available at beneaththeashes.com. Brandon, where else can people go to connect with you and support this work?
Yeah, you can go literally to Instagram, BD Lamar, that's Lamar. You can go find me on Facebook, Brandon Dante Lamar. But also, I want to say to our community that this film is so important. I bought over 100 tickets myself for people who probably couldn't afford to come. And so if you just can't afford to come and you want to come see it and you want to enjoy, hit me up. You got a free ticket on me. We gonna make it a community time. Thank you so much.
We thank you so much. You are listening to and streaming A More Perfect Union live from the White House. The quiet part out loud when we come forward. Thank you, Brandon.
Striving to make America